claims, and people like us try to help you prevent those wherever possible. So that's what we're here to do today, a training, and hopefully that will prevent or mitigate future accidents that we may or may not get involved with. Jay-Z's been with CIS since I've been in high school, so he's been here a long time, and he's a valued resource that we have. So let's, without further ado, let's get started.
Well, thank you, Lori. If you noticed, Lori introduced me as Jay-Z. That's what I go by a lot of times because it's a tough last name. But rest assured, I do not rap and I do not dance. But my wife's a lot hotter than Beyonce, okay? So you're all of my witnesses that I said that, okay? I've been with CIS about 19 years. I've actually been teaching and training for about 35 years in my career. I learned early on in my career that when they hook you up to a wireless mic and you dash off to the bathroom just before class starts, turn it off. Quite embarrassing when I came back. How many of you have taken this class before from me? Was it punishment? You're coming back again? How many of you took it last year? Nobody?
I did.
Okay. One honest soul here. Okay, I'm trying to get to the point that I have added a number of videos and some new slides, so hopefully if you've taken this before, there'll be some new things that you can take a look at. And besides that, they have proven through research that you only retain about 15% of whatever class or training you go through. It says a lot about me, huh? But this way, perhaps you can pick up some new things. We're going to spend about an hour, 2 hours and 15 minutes today. I'm going to try to get you on a break about 2 o'clock, give or take 5 or 10 minutes. 5-minute break, but please honor that 5 minutes. I don't want to be herding chickens to get you all back in here so we can get through with all this material. I like to teach in a relaxed atmosphere. A lot of people can't sit for long periods of time. Some have back issues. If you want to get up and walk around to the side or stretch, you're not going to offend me. I want you to be comfortable. So, to give you another idea of how I like to do my trainings, I'll start you off with a little short video here.
What's your emergency? Yeah, my wife got attacked by a warthog real bad, and I need someone to come up with an ambulance and pick her up. Okay, sir. Can you give me your address? Yeah, we're at 1825 Eucalyptus Drive. Okay, can you spell that for me, sir? I'm going to drag her on over to Oak Street, and you can pick her up there.
Probably going to be a short marriage, I imagine.
You guys still gonna take me in?
Not yet.
Cops having fun. Okay, today's goals, we're going to talk about the risks of distracted driving. A lot of you probably aren't even aware of the distractions that you face every single day. A lot of these are technology induced. A lot of them are habits, bad habits over the years. We can't avoid them. We're going to talk about some ways of reducing distractions. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that we can eliminate 100% all distractions. That's pie in the sky thinking. But if you understand that it is a distraction and you understand how it affects you, we can talk about ways that maybe you could lessen or minimize those distractions. You're going to hear me over and over say, stay focused on your driving. If your eyes are not on the road, your brain is not engaged in driving safely, you're distracted. There's no other way about it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Eyes on the road, brain engaged. You're doing anything else, you are distracted. And when you are distracted, that's when the bad things happen. Because we certainly want this to not happen to you, whether you're driving for the city or you're driving personally. How many of you have been in an accident in your life? And of those that had been in an accident, how many of them were your fault? None? Wow. Nobody? Okay.
I brought the claim form, so you guys better pass it.
How many of you have been in an accident while working on the job? Well, about 2/3 of those that raise their hand. Okay, interesting. So what do you think was the cause of this 50-car pileup? And I did sit one afternoon and I counted all of these, so I know it's 50, both sides of the highway. Cell phone? Nope. Fog. 6 a.m., California highway, heavy fog bank rolled in. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody slowed down until it was too late. I'd hate to be the state trooper that had to work on this accident scene. Clear back in 2005, we can see that the predominant size, the largest proportion of the pie results in workplace fatalities and workplace accidents. Here it is, 43%. That's clear back in 2005. Now, if you go 2010, 2011, 2012, what do you think the number one cause of workplace fatalities was? What class are we in? Driving. Think about your jobs. You know, public works, methane gas, chlorine, working in trenches, traffic, parks, mowers, chemicals, falling from different heights, workplace violence. There are a lot of things in your jobs that can hurt you and kill you. And yet you stand a greater chance of losing your life while at work driving a vehicle. And this is not just the state of Oregon, this is nationwide. These statistics are alarming, and that's why we're trying to bring more focus to the attention of cities and county employees about driving safely. Every year in this country, 40,000+ people lose their life on our highways. Anyone been to Safeco Field where the Mariners play? It holds about 40,000 people. Can you imagine every single year that many people are just wiped off the face of the earth in this country? That's a lot. And when you think about the engineering designs, the safety improvements of the vehicles, the better designed highways, bridges, more educational opportunities, kind of makes you wonder why each year we kill 40,000+ people. Is none of it catching on? Now, after having said that, 32,788 people were killed in 2010, the fewest since 1949. So after having said what I just said, why do you think in 2010, it was the first year since 49, we dropped below 40,000? Airbags, no. Mm-hmm. It'll catch up to that. You're on the right track, but in later years.
We lost 160,000 4 years prior.
Hmm?
We lost like 160,000 people 4 years prior.
No. I see your logic, but I'm sorry. We had just come out of the worst recession since the World War II. More people in this country lost their jobs and more people had their cars repossessed than ever before. As a consequence, a significant proportion of drivers was reduced driving on our highways. And as a result, we finally dropped below 40,000. Now, Oregon tracked the same way. We usually kill about 400,000+ on our highways every year. But in 2010, we dropped down to 317. Again, tracking to the national economy, the recession, loss of jobs, vehicles being repossessed. But Secretary of Transportation Costales was looking at everything. He was looking at drunk driving. He was looking at teen driving, elderly driving. He was looking at motorcycles, looking at speed, pedestrians, bicyclists. He was looking at everything, trying to figure out why did we, for the first time in so many years, drop below 40,000. In 2010, it was the 12th straight year that Oregonians fared better than the national average. So sometime around 1998, something clicked, and Oregonians started driving much more effectively, safer, which is a good thing, because prior to 1998, we were the worst for 50 straight years. Imagine having that title. But now we're doing some things that are good, so we need to keep up with doing that. So they looked at 2010, the 32,310 that died, and then they went ahead and said, okay, well, let's go to 2011, see if it's the same thing. Well, in 2011, 16,290 died from January through June. Now, one would think that, okay, from July through December, double that, and we'd have 32,580 or so. Doesn't work that way, because for some reason, between July and December, a significantly higher proportion of people lose their lives on our highways in the first half of the year. So the bottom line is, when we got through with 2011, we were back up above 40,000. So it was kind of an anomaly for a couple of years there. We went through the recession era, and now we're just back to normal. Even 2013 is tracking the same way, and so far in 2014, we're right on track to again be above 40,000. If you look at the three primary causes of fatalities, safety belts is one. As you can see, Oregonians are pretty compliant, 95.2% usage. How many of you religiously buckle up every time you get in your vehicle, whether you're driving around the block, a residential block, or just driving across the parking lot? Yeah, not that many, just under 50% of you. Okay, let's look at it this way. How many of you know who Usain Bolt is? 3, 4, 5, 6 people, that's it. Usain Bolt is the fastest man on earth. 2-time Olympic gold medalist in the 100-meter dash. Now, how fast do you think he runs? Pretty close, 26 miles per hour. That's the fastest man on earth. Now, how many of you, when you hit a school zone driving around, you hit the brakes, you slow down to 20, and you're just like you're in molasses. You can't wait to get out of there so you can hit the gas and speed up. And yet, I would bet $100 there's nobody in this room that can run 20 miles per hour. Think about that. That's fast. 26 is the fastest man on earth. So you're not really driving that slow. It just appears that way. But if you're not buckled up, even at 20 miles per hour, and you hit some solid object, and you slam into the steering wheel, the dashboard, the window, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to knock your teeth out. You're going to break your nose. Maybe get a concussion. Maybe snap your neck. That's just at 20 miles per hour. And that's why it's important that you buckle up even at the low speeds to keep your body firmly attached to that seat. Speed accounts for half of the other fatalities. And then a third of fatalities, impaired driver. Now, impaired driving is not just your drunk driver. You can be pulled over and cited for driving under the influence, DUI, for doctor-prescribed medications, painkillers, antibiotics. It says right on the bottle in red letters, mostly, do not operate heavy-duty equipment or machinery, do not drive a vehicle while taking this medication, may cause drowsiness. Yet how many of us, when we get to work, report to our supervisors that we're on some medication and we probably shouldn't be driving or operating the backhoe today? Probably not that many of you. And I think we need to do a better job of self-reporting, simply because you're not going to get in trouble for having medications by a doctor. If you have some ailment, some injury, some illness, and you're prescribed painkillers or antibiotics, whatever, and you show up to work and tell your supervisor, they're not going to fire you. You're not going to get a written reprimand. You're not going to be disciplined. It's against the law. But how many of you are working side by side with a coworker that actually can be impaired and doesn't tell anyone? Not only putting themselves in jeopardy, but you as well. You want to work next to someone like that? You can be cited for DUI for over-the-counter non-prescription medications. Go into Fred's, go into Walmart, go into Walgreens, get painkillers, aspirin, cold medications. You take too much of all that stuff and mix a lot of them together, you could have some bad results. And all a cop has to do if he suspects you as being impaired, pull you over, get a blood draw, and it shows up. DUI is driving under the influence of intoxicants, alcohol and or drugs. So we need to be a lot more careful about how we drive and under what conditions. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration conducted a study several years ago. They randomly selected 100 drivers across the board, all different walks of life, different vehicles. They installed video cameras in each of their vehicles. These people knew that they were being filmed, recorded. Collectively, over the course of the study, they amassed over 2 million miles. And the most astounding conclusion at the end result of the study, 80% of the drivers in accidents were inattentive, distracted within 3 seconds of impact. And I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that window. Because in the second hour, we're going to take a look at how that window of 3 seconds can shrink down to 1.5 to 1 second is all the time you have if you're distracted and something happens in which to pull your vehicle to a complete stop. Can anyone in here say that they can stop their vehicle at 65 miles per hour in 1 to 1.5 seconds? No. It's physically impossible. And when you're distracted, inattentive while driving at those speeds and something happens and you don't see it, that's your window. That's why we have fatalities. That's why we have serious accidents. What's the most common day for crashes? I didn't hear. Monday? Friday? Any other days? Got 7 to choose from. Okay, how many of you say Monday? How many of you say Friday? How many of you say Monday and Friday? Come on, I'm giving you a hint here. Why do you think that is? Well, yeah, in those words, okay. Friday, finished a long week. We're fatigued, we're tired, we can't wait to get away. We're thinking about our weekend. We got a couple of days of respite coming up. We may be going fishing with some buddies. We may be going hunting. We may be going on a weekend barbecue in the park. We may be driving up to Portland to watch the Trailblazers. We may be playing cards with friends on Friday night. We're social animals. We do things with other people and friends. And when our mind is occupied with those things, getting away from a place we don't want to be at, we're more inclined to be distracted. Now, after we've gone through a nice weekend of rest and relaxation, Monday morning blues, we're having to drag ourselves out of bed and go back to a place we really don't want to go to. So, nationwide and in the state of Oregon, those are the 2 days that most accidents happen. So if we can just convince our boss that we should only work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, yeah, that'll go over like a lead balloon. What's the most common day for fatal crashes? Saturday? Sunday? That's it, Saturday, Sunday? That's all your choices? Okay, how many of you say Saturday? How many say Sunday? And that means about 30 of you have no idea. Okay, how many of you say Friday and Saturday? Okay. Go back to the 3 primary causes of fatalities, one of them being the impaired driver. Unfortunately, Friday night, Saturday night, party night, that's when the drunks are out. That's when most of the fatalities happen. And as we oftentimes hear, it's the drunk that walks away from the accident unscathed. The innocent people have been killed. Most common time for crashes during the week? 5 p.m., quitting time. p.m.? Okay, that's still quitting time. 11 p.m. That's quitting time at the bars. Nobody wants the morning? 8 in the morning? Okay, I've got you to narrow it down. It's either the morning commute or the afternoon commute. So how many of you pick morning commute? How many of you pick afternoon? Oh, you're right. And the afternoon commute can be anywhere from 2 to 7 because of variations of shift times. But again, it's the end of the day. We're more fatigued and tired. We're not thinking about driving. The morning commute, we do better. Hopefully we had a good night's sleep. We have our coffee. We're more alert, refreshed, ready to tackle. Most common time for crashes during the weekend is beer 30. So what's the most common weather for crashes? Fog? Rain? In Oregon? You're kidding. Snow? Huh? Clear weather? Okay, how many of you pick fog? Well, somebody has to raise their hand. They said it. Okay. Rain. Heavy rain. Snow. Sleet. Ice. Warm, dry, sunny, clear days. There you go. Why do you suppose that is? We tend to drive a lot faster. We roll the windows down, we put the sunroof back, we put our favorite CD in, crank it up. We're going like a bat out of hell, thinking about everything except driving safely. But when we face the elements, we have a tendency to be more defensive-minded. You get up in the morning and 6 inches of snow is on the ground. What are you going to do? Go back to bed? Right. No, we're going to slow down and drive more carefully. Same thing with heavy rain. Same thing with fog. Whenever those elements, the weather elements, impact us, we tend to drive slower and more carefully. But when it's warm, clear, dry, we're just going like crazy down the road. We have to look at the crash as a triple crash. Your vehicle is going down the road at 50 miles per hour. What else is traveling 50 miles per hour? You are, the driver, the body. What else is traveling 50 miles per hour? Soft tissue organs in your body. You got your brain, you got your lungs, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your intestines, stomach. But what encases all of those? Skull, rib cage. A lot of times police officers walk up on a scene, an accident scene, and they look inside and there's no visible evidence the person's even hurt, yet they're dead. There's no sign of blood. Person wasn't wearing a safety belt, slammed in the steering wheel, the dashboard, the side of the car. When you do that, you're not secured in your seat with a safety belt. Your skull is going to shatter, your rib cage is going to splinter, break, shatter. You're going to run all of those organs, all of your veins, all of your arteries, almost like running them through a meat grinder. We only have about 8 pints of blood in our body. It's not a whole lot. You start ripping everything up inside of you with those shattered bones, it doesn't take long to bleed out. When that happens, you can be dead in 3 to 4 minutes. Nothing that can be done about that. Now, the safety belt, it was made with safety in mind. It was engineered, designed. It's a webbing material. It's designed to stretch up to 2 inches. Your lap belt, your shoulder harness, in conjunction with the airbag that comes out at 200 miles per hour, that is designed to save your life. Have you ever noticed that you drive around and you cover your brake and all of a sudden your shoulder harness is locked? It's designed for that. Just like the airbag goes off by sensors on your bumpers and the side doors and even on the ceiling on some of the newer cars. Same thing with shoulder harness. It locks. It locks upon impact through sensors on the bumpers, doors, and the rear bumper as well. so that it can hold your body firmly to the seat. And again, that will stretch a couple inches, and so will the lap belt and the airbag. That's what protects your life. Now, some people feel the shoulder harness is uncomfortable and they put it underneath their arm. Well, you're right back to square one, because if the shoulder harness is under here, you're going to shatter these ribs here and you're going to probably be bleeding inside again. Put it across the way it's designed to be worn. You may break a clavicle, collarbone. It may get bruised, but you're going to walk away from the accident at 50, 60 miles per hour. But you have to use them. Now, I've seen worse accidents than this. This is a result of a vehicle that rolled over about 4 or 5 times. It's not too bad. Here's an attractive young woman, Denise. Friday night, Denise decided to go to her friends for a party. Along about midnight, Denise decided she was going to go home. She also knew she was drunk. But she was still going to drive because she only lived about a mile away. She'd take some of the back roads and she'd be okay. Mistake number 1. She knew she was drunk. Nobody held a gun to her head, albeit when you are drunk, you don't make the smartest decisions. But she made a decision nonetheless to get in her vehicle and drive home knowing that she was drunk. Denise didn't buckle up. Mistake number 2. Again, nobody forced her to get in the car and drive without buckling up. About 3/4 of the way home, Denise couldn't navigate a turn in the road, rolled right over the bank, rolled her car about 4 or 5 times down. Shattering glass, twisting, breaking metal, she was tossed like a rag doll all over that car. They got her to the emergency room, and by the end of the first month, she'd undergone 15 major operations. They saved her life. But because of those 2 mistakes that Denise made, driving drunk and not buckling up, she gets to spend the rest of her life like this. Blind in one eye, disfigured for life. She went from this to this in a matter of seconds. 2 mistakes. She had control over those decisions. And once you get into this situation, once you're going down that pathway, there's no turning back. We can't stop time. We can't run it in slow motion. We can't reverse it. You make those bad decisions driving, and this is the consequence that can result. So what do you think this driver did wrong? Yeah, he was driving okay, but when he loaded up his backhoe, he forgot to lower the boom, and so his height was a lot higher than he thought. In the 19 years I've worked with CIS, we've paid 3 of these claims around the state from cities and counties. They run about $15,000 each. Put a new pole up, string new line, new transformer, clean up the PCB. So they're not cheap claims when they happen. What do you think this driver did? Why was he distracted? Or what was he distracted from? He's at least able to climb out alive. But you can see his track hoe off the side. We don't know where his truck is. County bridge warning sign. Bridge load limit, 1 ton. When you take about 3 to 4 tons over a 1-ton bridge, this is what happens. So when you're not paying attention, you're distracted, you're not following the advisory and cautionary signs, bad things happen. Now, there are 242 incorporated cities in the state of Oregon, and I've been in every single one of them. And over all the years, you don't know how many times I find in public works, these pickup trucks, you guys got so much stuff in the back bed. 150-pound chlorine gas cylinders, barricades, sacks of concrete, shovels, picks, rakes. None of it's tied down or secured. Where do you think it's going to go when you got to slam on your brakes? And where do you think it's going to go when you're piled so high you take a corner too fast and mama's out walking, strolling her 2-year-old, and you take that corner and all that stuff, centrifugal force is going to carry it right out of your bed. We have to think about these things. These are all parts of distractions that before you get in that vehicle and take off, you need to pay attention to what you're hauling. Not sure how he's going to get out of that one. So give this guy a D+ for effort. Why is the gas can out in the lane of traffic? At least they should have reversed these two maybe. But rumor was, due to budget cuts, each truck was allotted one cone and he didn't want to lose this one. Even the professional drivers, if they're not paying attention to the road conditions, the elements, bad things can happen. When you exceed the limitations of the vehicle in conjunction with the road, the environmental elements, you roll your truck. 5-ton county dump truck. This driver was killed. Cab crushed him. Took a turn too fast. His load shifted. Rolled the truck. Killed instantly. 5-ton county dump truck. This driver survived, but he was in the hospital and on rehab for the better part of 6 to 8 months. Seriously injured. Again, load shifting, rolled his truck, accident. Even the EMT emergency drivers. A bridge, overhang, concrete beam. I do not know if a patient was in the back, but as you can see, even our professional drivers, when they exceed conditions and don't pay attention, and they too are distracted, bad things happen. How many of you know what this is? Max in Portland. About 5-6 years ago, during deposition and under oath in a court of law, the Max driver admitted that he was texting on his cell phone. At the time, the Hillsborough Fire Department was coming through, their big ladder truck, and it's the one that the driver sits in the back and steers the back end around the turns. Now, Hillsborough fire engines, they have these things that are almost like garage door openers. They push them, and it keeps all the signal lights green so they can go straight through all the time. So Hillsborough is running red. Lights, sirens. Max driver's got big old flashing red lights. Because he's texting and preoccupied, he doesn't hear or see a thing. Runs into the fire engine, puts 3 firefighters in the hospital. This is all that was left of the back end, and that's all that was left, the front cab of the engine. Now, at the time, the Oregon Tort Claim Act had a maximum limitation on property damage of $50,000. Shortly thereafter, OHSU came out with that $20 million lawsuit judgment. The little infant that was denied oxygen for 20 minutes during surgery and was going to be paraplegic and brain dead for the rest of his life. And so that forced the state legislature to go back and rewrite the Tort Claim Act. The Tort Claim Act was in effect because it follows the law along the lines of common law. The king can do no wrong. And you can't allow people to sue cities or counties to the point they're bankrupt. Cities and counties are not like Microsoft, where they can make billions of dollars through investors and stocks and sale of their products. Cities and counties rely on taxpayer dollars, and whatever you get, that's it. And so there are limitations on how much you can sue a governmental entity. However, in this case, because of the OHSU case, court said this is way too low, and they hadn't been changed in like 30 years anyway. So, backtrack to this. Because of that $50,000 cap limit on property damage at the time, the attorneys for Max argued that in court and prevailed. And that's all they had to pay, even though their driver admitted he was texting at the time. We had to come up with well over $400,000 to get Hillsborough a new fire engine. Kind of pissed me off back then and still does now when I think about it. But now, today, because of the legislative change in the Tort Claims Act, for all events out of a single occurrence, cities and counties are on the hook for $1,666,000. And it increases every year. And until subsequent years down the road, the legislature will again reevaluate and up the limits a little bit more to make it more fair. Polk County Sheriff's Deputy responding to officer needs assistance. It doesn't do your fellow employee any good if you don't get there because you exceed the limitations of the vehicle, the road conditions, you're distracted, not paying attention, and you roll your vehicle. Myrtle Creek police officer playing with his MDT, mobile data terminal, fancy name for a laptop, didn't see the road turning, rolled right down the banks into the Umpqua River. There are large boulders and fast current in the Umpqua River, and it just tossed that vehicle back and forth, totaled it out. Now, at the time the Crook County Deputy Sheriff was in pursuit of a bad guy, the cone and the tape were not up. What he didn't notice was the raised up sewer manhole. As a consequence, tore the whole underside of his squad car up. Bad guy got away. Clatsop County Sheriff's Deputy in pursuit of bad guy turns the corner. Who does he meet? Another Clatsop County Deputy Sheriff in pursuit. They run into each other. Bad guy gets away. But they knew who the guy was that they were chasing, so they went and arrested him later on that night. Sanitation driver, again, not paying attention to county road bridge limit signs. City of Bend, snowplow operator. Now, we need snowplows. They're good. They get us from point A to point B safely and quickly. They just don't operate very effectively in this position. Here's the top of the hill. This is where it started. And the operator of the backhoe unit wasn't paying attention. This is just before it enters the river. And what do you think's down there at the bottom of the river? See the outline, the yellow shade of the backhoe? That was about a $75,000 case backhoe. It was about 12 years old, so it wasn't valued quite that much, but yes, we did cover it. But again, it's not just driving a vehicle, it's operating your equipment, and we don't pay attention, you don't engage the brake, the emergency brakes, or turn it off, bad things happen. Marion County head-on collision last September, life flight to Legacy Emanuel. As you can see, extensive damage, not paying attention. Head-on collision with a 2006 International truck pulling a trailer. This resulted in a fatality. You can't even see the front passenger seats. They're pretty much engulfed by the engine. That was on Highway 20. Here on I-5 South, right outside of Grants Pass, semi. Driver was cited for careless driving and failure to drive in a lane. Well, I don't think that is a lane, so kind of a tough position you get yourself into, but you get a citation nonetheless. Here's another impact at 40 miles per hour. And I show you these simply because I think over time we develop a Hollywood mentality. We see all of these movies and these high-speed car chases and through the streets of San Francisco, and these cars are bouncing off of all kinds of cars and running into other cars, and they're spinning around, and then when they come to a stop, there's a little trickle of blood down the driver's forehead and everyone walks away. That's not reality. That's Hollywood. That's special effects. They're not driving even a tenth that fast. Because of special effects, they make it appear that way. And consequently, this type of damage that you just seen in these photos, that doesn't show up in your movies. This is the reality at speeds as low as 40 miles per hour and then higher. This driver was distracted. All of a sudden he looked up and he just knew that if he hit the gas, he could beat that semi coming through this intersection. He lost. Took the whole top of his car off plus his head. Instant death. Here's out on near Scappoose. SUV collides with a Ford F-350, a one-ton. Driver was killed in this. This was just last year. These are all things in the state of Oregon that have occurred in the last year. This is reality. This is what happens. Here's a driver over in the Audubon, traveling 155 miles per hour. As you can see, the diameter of that tree is not very large. But just like they build Indy 500 cars, they put the cages around the driver. Whenever they get into wrecks, everything dissipates out and away from the driver. The cage protects them. Same thing here. When you're driving that fast and you hit something, everything, the energy goes out and away. This guy wrapped his car around that tree. Of course, he was killed instantly. Brand new Toyota Celica 5-speed. 18-year-old, just graduated from high school. Good grades, good kid. Enrolled in college in the fall. Mom and Dad took him out and bought him a brand new car for graduation present. So what does he do the first morning he gets his car? Takes it out and sees how fast that puppy can go. About 100 miles per hour, he lost control of the vehicle, slammed right into a large oak tree. Coroner's report indicated every single bone in that boy's body was shattered, crushed, broken. 18 years old, his whole life ahead of him. Good future, good kid. Not paying attention, exceeding limitations, distracted, getting into a situation that he doesn't know how to handle. Life over. So did you get through that? Kind of amazing, isn't it? This is actually a sample of Lori's typing skills. So you're probably sitting there saying, well, John, why does this have anything to do with distracted driving? Well, if you think about it, we live in a society where we have a proliferation of signs. We have business signs, advertisement signs, billboard signs, street signs, construction signs, speed limit signs, caution signs. Everywhere you look, there's signs. Now, if we had to look at every letter of every word in every sentence and dissect it in that manner, it would be bumper car city out there. Everybody would be running into each other because our eyes are not on the road, our brain is not engaged in driving safely. But the phenomenal power of our eyes and our brain is that in a mere 500 thousandths of a second, our eyes can see something, a collection of letters in a sentence, transfer it to the brain, and immediately we know what it says. And that's how we drive safety, because if we're just taking 100 thousandths of a second to glance at something and know what it's telling us, our eyes and our brain are back on the road driving safely, instead of consumed with a sign trying to figure out, what in the heck does that say? What am I supposed to do? Then again, cities and counties in the state get a little bit carried away. This is too much information in one location, and at a speed of 55, you can't decipher all that. This actually becomes a distraction. You don't know if you're going south, east, west, truck, bypass, 601, 73, 29. They need to spread these things out so that the driver can visualize things quickly and make a determination of where to go. Now there's another sign identical to this way down here coming in the other direction. This city had this bridge hit 3 times, and they were tired of having it taken out of commission, the cost of repairs, having it out of action. So somebody in town came up with this pretty good risk management idea. And so now when these trucks are coming through and they start hearing metal clanging on the tops of their rigs, they're jumping on their brakes. Since these signs went up, they've had 0 bridge hits. Something to think about. Just as we rely on signs to get us around safely, signs are good, they're important, but they can also be confusing. Now, the official interpretation of this sign is drivers in the left lane make the sharp left, drivers in the second sharp lane, second most sharp, and blah, blah, blah. My interpretation is follow along with the flow of traffic and hope you don't die. Now, since I got a hold of this, I have found out that if you're not in this lane right here, guess what's on the other side of this Bank of America building? Community hospital, emergency room. So you're coming into this area and you're looking to get to the emergency room because your small child's in the back seat. Don't you think it would be an important bit of information to tell drivers, get in this lane here? Because if you don't, you're in any other lane, you have an 18-block detour to get back to the same point. Anyone want to waste that much time when your kid's in the back seat hurting real bad? Of course not. This is located in San Francisco, California. The official interpretation of this is I have no idea. In my interpretation, I still have no idea because apparently you can drive in these 3 lanes from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., but you're only allowed in this lane from 3:30 to 7, which is within this time frame. So if you look at it and think about it, the obvious error in this sign is this should have been AM. They're bringing in the morning commute in these 3 lanes, and they're taking the afternoon commute out in these 3 lanes. But it doesn't say that. And when the sign says something other than what it's projecting it to say, it confuses us. And we don't need to be confused while we're driving down the road. So what are you going to do here? Take the high road of caution and stop. And call street department. Call number 2 to street department. Can't really see the bottom of that, but oddly enough in dry weather there is none at all. My editorials. Okay, we get it. Good information. Kind of hope that reverse works in the vehicle. Call number 3 or 4 to street department. Okay, I give up. Street department's going to be very busy this morning. Bit of dyslexia. This is not Photoshop. This is a true picture of a sign. So we have worked about 6 months. We've accumulated some vacation time. And it's now time to load up the family and the trailer and the kids. And we're heading out of town. And the last thing we need to do is stop by the ATM and get some cash for vacation. Not a way to start out the vacation. Well, as you can see, the brakes weren't engaged, the wheels weren't shocked, and bad things happened. How many of you ride around with somebody that cannot carry on a conversation without turning to talk to you face to face? Drives me nuts when they do it. I keep pushing their head back. Watch the road. Keep your eyes on the road. You're 3 feet apart from each other. You can carry on a conversation in a closed environment. And yet, people do this all the time and even turn around to the back. We're shoving food in our mouths, drive-throughs. We got a little road rage and stress developing here. We're forgetting about our school zones and our kids. We're fooling around with the CD player, the MP3, the GPS. We're talking on our cell phones. We're stressed out. Any one of these by themselves can lead to this head-on collision down here. When you start stacking one on top of another, that's a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to show you about an 18-20 minute video now. It's called Driven to Distraction 2. I'd like you to look at this with the idea that you're in the scenes somewhere. And see if you can sort of relate to any of the things that you're about to see. You just got replaced by Vanna White here, sorry. Law, paper. Here we see a jury awarding $7.3 million, $21 million, $5.2 million against drivers that killed other people while talking on a cell phone. This is clear back in 2003. This is not something that I'm warning you is about to occur. It's been going on for a long time in this country. Now, before you start thinking, well, good luck getting $5.2 million out of me, you get a judgment in the court of law like this. They will garnish your wages. They'll take your retirement. They'll take your house, your boat, your trailer. They will hound you for life. And don't think that you can quit your job, go to another state, and hide from them. They'll find you. They may not get their $5.2 million out of you, but they'll get as much as they can. So you need to make those decisions. Is it worth going through something like that? We're concerned as your insurance company because this same jury pool is making awards against organizations, companies that fail to implement a no cell phone use policy and fail to implement it uniformly across the board. If you have a policy that prohibits the use of cell phone while driving on company time, and you only use it to selectively punish those employees you're trying to get rid of, you're going to be in a whale of trouble in the court of law. It has to be uniformly applied consistently. But as you can see, 30 million, 21 million. So after they get through with you, they'll come after the city and dig their claws even deeper. To give you another idea that this is not just 2003, 2008, 24.7 million, 18 million in 2011, 21.5 million in 2007, 24 million in 2012. This has been going on all across this country multiple times, over and over and over. Again, for people that are using cell phones and they kill other people or they maim or injure them for life. Now, don't think you can get away with it. All the police have to do is confiscate your cell phone. They can find out exactly whether you called someone, what number you called, or if the call came from somewhere else, at what time, the duration of the call. They tie it and pinpoint it to the time of the accident. You're cooked. You can't hide from them whatsoever. Here in 2009, they attributed 6,000 highway deaths to distracted driving and 1,000 to cell phone use. I think that is extremely low. It wasn't until about 2009 that they finally put a block, or at least a section on the accident reports, where a local cop, a state trooper, a sheriff's deputy could actually fill in this accident. Contributing factor was a cell phone use. So we didn't have a whole lot of data prior to 2009. But I think as they start looking at things from that point forward to today, they're going to see that that 1,000 attributed to cell phone use, that's going to skyrocket. It's really, really a severe hazard going on out there. Now, some people say, well, what's the difference between me talking to my driver or passenger and then talking on a cell phone? Well, the researchers, the professionals indicate that you can disengage that passenger conversation just like that, instantly. That passenger is also a second set of eyes and ears to help you drive safely. But there's something about the psyche of that cell phone, cyberspace. You get that cell phone up to your ear or even on a Bluetooth. It's the concentration of your mind, your brain, listening intently on what that person is saying, thinking about how you're going to respond, and thinking about things that you don't want to forget to talk about. And for some reason, we don't want to disengage that conversation, because when you disengage, poof, they're gone. Passenger's still there. You can resume that conversation at any time. And as we learned in the video, it's just like having two stiff drinks, and 37% less brain capacity to drive safely. So you significantly decrease your odds of driving safely while talking on a cell phone. This is straight out of state law. Mobile handheld unit includes cell phones, pagers, Palm Pilots. Remember the rage of Palm Pilots? They didn't last very long, primarily because the cell phone took over. Hands-free, it's either the Bluetooth or it's installed in your vehicle. But as we learned in the video, hands-free or Bluetooth is not any safer than a handheld. Now in 2009, the Oregon legislature passed their first no cell phone use law. But it was a joke. And the state troopers, the local law enforcement, and sheriff's deputies said, we can't enforce this. And the reason is because they wrote an exemption in there, the legislature. As long as you are talking to your work, or it's work related, you can use a handheld cell phone. Well, law enforcement said that's impossible to enforce. We're not going to waste our time trying to track down all these calls and whether they're legitimate or not. So they stopped. They didn't enforce it. Well, the public was pretty much outraged at that. So much so that by 2011, they came back and threw that exemption out. So public outcry changed the law. So now you're no longer exempt talking to your work or having it work related. Suggestions are that if you need to use a cell phone, give the cell phone to your passenger, let them receive or make the call. Easy enough. I can't tell you not to use a Bluetooth or a hands-free because the law says you can. But just understand we now know from research it's not any safer than handheld. There are exemptions in the bill still. 911, law enforcement, police, fire, emergency services. I think that emergency services and fire are going to go away soon. That's because there are a number of people on a fire truck that can take a call or make a call. Same thing with an ambulance, 2 people. There's no reason the driver has to. I think it's going to be more of a pushback with law enforcement. Even though there are a number of departments, a number of counties across this country that have outright banned cell phone use by their police officers or deputy sheriffs. Because how unsafe it is. I mean, Lord knows we give them enough junk in their cars. The laptops, the radar detectors, the programs that automatically spot license tags, give you warnings about stolen vehicle or arrest warrants. 2-way radios. Now we give them a cell phone. It's a public relations nightmare for law enforcement for an officer on routine patrol at 2 o'clock in the afternoon driving down Main Street getting a shopping list from home. And there are a lot of departments that are starting to outlaw and ban the use of cell phones except in emergency circumstances. And this is where I think the pushback's going to come. Because when you have multiple agencies responding to a single event, there's only one person still that can talk on that 2-way radio at one time. And so under emergency conditions, they use the cell phone to coordinate response. Get suspect descriptions, incident location, addresses. They coordinate who's going to be where, when, and why. So as a tool, it can be very valuable if used in those conditions only. And for that reason, I think the law enforcement is going to be the hardest pushback, and they'll probably stay. I work out of the Tigard office, which is right at I-5 and 217. I live in Vancouver, so my commute's really unbelievable through downtown Portland and up I-5. And during the wintertime, it just amazes me. 5 o'clock, I leave the office. Well, in the wintertime at 5 o'clock, what is it outside? Dark. And so I get on I-5 and I make my way north through the Terwilliger curves at my usual 2 to 3 miles per hour on the interstate. But I look around in all 3 lanes and everybody's face is all lit up in their cars. They're all on their cell phones. And they have no idea whether there's a cop somewhere in the area in one lane, up or behind or whatnot, that they're going to get pulled over. I drive about 30, 40,000 miles a year for CIS, and I'm telling you, it is an epidemic out there. 7 out of 10 cars that pass me or I pass, they're on the cell phone, and most of them are not on a handheld. I mean, hands-free. They're on a handheld. And I can't tell you what segment of society is abusing it the most. It's young, men, women, girls, boys, old. It's all across the board. But there's so much defiance out there in people and cell phones, it's unbelievable. Well, in 2013, because of the pressure of cell phone use, the legislature came back. And guess what they did in 2013? They increased the fine from $141 to $500. They wanted $1,000, but they couldn't get it out of committee. So they compromised, and now the law is $500 if you're pulled over for a cell phone use violation. And here's the kicker. You don't even have to be talking on it. If a cop sees you holding your cell phone in your hand, you can get pulled over and cited. Last year, there were 3 employees from the same city in the span of 1 week's time in 2 different cities received cell phone violations simply because they were holding their cell phones. The cops don't know. Are you reading emails? Are you texting? Are you surfing the internet? Are you looking for restaurants? Are you using your GPS? Are you looking at photos? If your cell phone's in your hand while you're driving, it's a violation. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have 5 C notes in my wallet that I can just toss down the toilet. But they're starting to pull them over, and they're starting to enforce it. And don't be surprised if next year, when the legislature convenes, that somebody tries to push it up to $750 or $1,000. Because it's getting so bad out there, they've got to do something. They figure that if they hit you in the pocketbook, that's what's going to get your attention. Cell phones are here to stay. It's technology. There's over 230,000 cell phones in use in this country right now. Even our kids have them, so we can keep track of them. And as of December 31st of 2013, there are over 2 billion smartphones in use in this world. That's technology. It's not going away. We've got to get smarter at how we use it. And using the cell phone while driving down the road is not a good idea. It's amazing to me that it's not 38 states, it's now up to 41 states have had to pass a law that bans texting, which is so ludicrous. I can't imagine people texting with their phone while they're driving down the road. And they're not putting themselves in jeopardy only, they're putting yourself and everyone around them in jeopardy as well. Do they have that right to put you in harm's way and possibly injure you seriously or kill you? I think not. National Safety Council finally, after 10 to 12 years of pressure, came out in writing, cell phone distracted driving is a significant threat to public safety. Hurrah. It's taken them all this time to finally come up with an anthem. These things happen every day on our highways, multiple, dozens and dozens of times. Passenger goes to sleep, driver falls asleep, texting, runs into the back of a semi-trailer. Another driver's under the influence, can't negotiate the term, texting, dies 2 days later from massive head injuries. This is not something that goes on once a week or once a month. This is going on dozens and dozens of times every single day in this country. Anytime you incorporate a high risk and a high exposure, it's a lethal recipe. And we've got to recognize how serious a hazard the cell phone use is. Probably the #1 distraction going on today, especially behind the wheel. Most amazing is 2011, AAA conducted a study nationwide. 94% of the people polled considered cell phone use a hazard, texting. 87% feel it causes distractions. 88% have no idea how distracted they really are. 88% feel it quickly leads to a crash. That is overwhelming confirmation from the general public, almost 9 out of every 10 people, that cell phone use and texting while driving is bad for you. Yet we all still do it. This isn't like 30 or 40% of those polled think it's bad. This is almost 90% of the people polled. But we continue to do it. And why? Because of this attitude. It's not okay for you. It's okay for me because I've been driving a long time and I know how to do it safely. But don't you dare try it because you don't know how to do it safely. You're going to cause an accident and maybe kill me. And until we get rid of that attitude, we're not going to get anywhere with a cell phone. I showed this to a coworker and she actually said, that would make texting easier. Then turned and walked away, and I had to chase her down and said, no, that is not what I'm talking about. That's not why I showed this to you. This is not an easier way to do it. Because again, it's not just the distracted driver on the cell phone, it's everyone around that driver that's at risk. So finally, National Safety Council, it's the safety of drivers, passengers, motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists. It should remain every driver's top priority, and when on the road, we all need to get off the phone. Finally, hurrah. and this is the anthem going forward. This is right outside of Estacada, Oregon. Woman on her cell phone, texting, fooling around. Doesn't realize that a semi hauling Christmas trees right in front of her, slows down significantly. She runs right into the back of it. Significant damage to her vehicle. Had it gone just a little bit further, probably would have taken her head off as well. So I'm going to show you a 10-minute video here, AT&T's The Last Text. You can Google this. You can upload it. It's free. Just type in AT&T The Last Text. I would encourage you to show this to your kids, your grandkids. I've shown it to all my kids and grandkids. It really has an impact on them. This 10-minute video is going to be the life of 4 drivers involving text messaging. Now, I'm not going to ask any of you in here if you text while you drive, because you wouldn't admit it anyway. But hopefully, if you are one of those people that does and thinks you can get away with it, perhaps after watching this, it might change your mind a little bit.
Striking the bridge that you can see behind me. When I got to the scene, her face was disfigured from sliding down the roadway. It's funny, the first thing I noticed about her was her shoes. Lying in the roadway in a large pool of blood, I noticed her shoes, and I thought, this is a young girl. But that's the first thing I thought when I saw this. And at that point is when I noticed her cap and gown was still in her car. She was going to graduate the next day. It was just a really horrific scene. All because of a senseless text message. It's just sad. Sorry, it's just sad.
Ashley would text hundreds of messages every day. That was the way we kept in touch. We would definitely text more than we talked.
Mariah was a multitasker extraordinaire. She could text better than anyone I know. She could be having one conversation with me, completely focused,
While having a text conversation with somebody else.
You do something 7,000 times a month. You tend to learn where those 26 letters are.
We would be at school, at home, movies, bowling, driving,
not even looking at her phone.
just simple,
Insignificant.
Useless, whatever it may be.
about anything and everything.
Just a way to pass the
It
time.
didn't matter where we were constantly texting. This is my sister. She was looking at my message that I had just sent her. When she looked up, she had clipped the median on the left-hand side of the road. Her truck flipped, and as it was flipping, she was actually ejected through the driver's side door. And she landed in the ditch about 300 feet from her truck. People will tell you over and over again, it's not your fault. But knowing that you were the person that she was talking to when she was killed. Just knowing having a highway patrol officer write in a report that a text message said at 12:05 is the reason that she is dead is not something that will ever go away. If I could talk to her one last time, I would just say I'm sorry. This is her cell phone that she used in the accident. 4 little letters That's what killed her.
You never really think about it, but people associate drinking and driving as a dangerous thing. Your vision's impaired, your judgment's impaired. But if you look at texting and driving, your vision's not even there. You're not even looking at the road. If someone were to ask me to drive down the road and close your eyes for 5 seconds or 6 seconds, I would never even attempt that. But if someone asks, read this text message and respond to that in about the same length of time, well, that would be no problem. I've done that numerous times in the past before this accident. I was on my way home. I had my girlfriend in the car, and I was just reading a text message, responding. I was looking up every couple seconds or so, like I always did. And I just hear a loud scream next to me. And the next second I look up and I see a bicyclist crashing the windshield. When I got out of the car, he didn't have a pulse, he was breathing. He wasn't alive. There are no words to describe the level of grief, the level of depression and self-hatred I was going through. My first year of college, I just remember one girl recognizing me and saying, oh, I remember hearing about you. You're that guy who hit the bicyclist because you were texting and driving. That was actually the day before I ended up going to the hospital for emotional problems. I said one stupid, meaningless text, LOL, and killed the man.
People don't realize it could just take 3 seconds. I was going to the movies and the car just went directly into a tree and it was a direct collision. I was the passenger. I collided with a tree on my right temple and I was declared dead on the scene 3 times. I used to be able to drive. I used to be able to go for walks. I used to be able to run around town by myself. I used to have a job. I was normal. And all this, I cannot do anymore because they got the text. This is the text message that changed my life forever.
The day before graduation, my daughter drove to go meet a boy, but she never made it. Today, she would have been 19 years old, exactly.
Mariah never wanted a minute to go by that she wasn't doing something. She wanted to do everything all at one time with friends and family and just having a good time. That's what she loved.
Friends would tell me from school that, the best part of the day at school was Mariah coming down the hall because she'd stop to give everyone a hug. Okay, guys, in honor of Mariah. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mariah.
She had met a guy who played baseball, and one evening she just spontaneously got in her car and said, hey, I'm going to come watch this game. He was texting her to tell her directions of where she needed to go.
And I guess she just looked away for too long.
Where are you at,
Like that was it. One of her friends had no idea that she had been in an accident, so he kept texting. We ended up having to send him a text back to say, please stop. She's in critical condition in the hospital, and we don't know if she'll even make it.
She always was dramatic, and still to this day, without her being here, she's so much still a part of our lives every day.
She was our sunshine. She really was. She was.
It's a simple text message. Where are you at? 3 simple words.
She paid the ultimate price for her actions. I've had to do this more than once. Mariah is not the only victim that I've dealt with. And it never gets any easier. And it won't get any easier. What is worth losing your life over? That text message?
So what'd you all think of that? Well, like I said, I'm not going to ask any of you if you text and drive, but hopefully after seeing that, you might rethink that type of habit. Some other safe driving habits, precautions. If you know the weather is going to be very bad, inclement weather, heavy snow, snowstorms, heavy rains, thunderstorms, you can delay your trip or at least postpone it, do so. There's no sense purposely putting yourself right in the midst of hazards and dangers. And a lot of these distractions, eating, applying makeup, I see women 65 miles per hour down the highway, the rear view mirror pointed towards them, putting eyeliner on. But I've seen men with electric shavers doing the same thing. I've seen people working crossword puzzles on their steering wheel. I've seen small little TVs up on the dashboard, laptops next to them. I've seen small dogs and children on their laps. I've seen people trying to read maps, head going up and down, map going up and down. There's a lot of crazy things out there people do. Those are behaviors. Those are habits. Those are things you can control. But you're the one that's going to have to decide whether you want to continue to take the risk, roll the dice, and get away with it. But Detroit's not helping us either. They're putting all this crap in our cars, radio, CD players, MP3s, GPS, even videos. There's no end to it. But as a driver, we still have the choice, the freedom to make the choice, and that's the point I'm trying to make. All of these distractions, they're not forced on you. Granted, it's like holding a raw steak in front of a dog's mouth and hoping he doesn't eat it or drool too much. But you got to make those decisions. Realize how they impact you and how they affect you. Watch the medications, doctor prescription medications, over the counter. We drive a lot of rental cars nowadays. Whenever we go 120 or more miles a day on our travels, they want us to rent a car, which is fine, saves wear and tear on my truck. But I'm loving it. I'm driving 2013 brand new Ford F-150 quad cab 4x4s, Dodge Chargers, Chevy Impalas, Ford Cherokee Jeeps. It's really fun. Nice vehicles, but you know what? Every one of those vehicles operates a little differently. The controls are different. They're located in different places. And so that's what I'm doing 3, 4, 5 minutes every time I rent a car from Enterprise. I'm sitting in their parking lot. I'm going over everything so I can familiarize myself with how the controls work and where they are. Because going over the mountain over to Medford and suddenly hitting a blinding snowstorm at the top is no time to try to figure out how to turn the wipers on or the defrost or whether your lights are even working. You need to find these things out ahead of time. I was in a Dodge Charger, a brand new one, and I pulled into a gas station in Ontario, Oregon, and it took the gas station attendant and me 10 minutes to figure out where the dang gas cap lever was. Couldn't get it open. And as most of you know, if you've rented a car, they take the manuals out of the glove compartment box. Well, we finally located it. It's underneath the armrest, back behind, hidden out of view, a small little button and a little cubby hole. So if you get a Dodge Charger, that's where it's located. You push it, gas cap pops open. Same thing with your personal vehicles when you drive to work, and then you're in a half-ton pickup, a 1-ton, a 5-ton dump truck, hauling trailers. Your turning radiuses are different, your weight in the vehicle is different, the brakes are different, and you're not in the same exact vehicle every single shift. So you have to become familiar with the vehicle you're being put in when it's not your own personal vehicle where you have a comfort. If you hit a fog bank, fog is nothing more than a cloud that's settled on the Earth's surface. But if you hit a real thick patch of fog and you can't hardly see, pull over as far to the right as you safely can, turn off your lights, get off the brake pedal, because people coming behind you, they're going to be looking for tail lights or brake lights. That person knows where they're going. I'm going right that way. They can see, I can't. Which is another reason to stay in your vehicle, don't get out. But that's the one thing a lot of drivers forget about is they turn their headlights off, but for some reason they're covering their brake. And that's putting the lights back on. Learn to identify black ice. It looks like shiny, sheeny, freshly paved asphalt. It should be gray, ashen, white in the wintertime. But look at your temperatures, because if it's freezing conditions, you may be on dry pavement for a while, but then you go around a mountain, and that side of the mountain gets the least amount of sun during the day, and all of a sudden you're back on black ice. And you hit black ice without warning, you're going for a sleigh ride. You cannot control your vehicle. We have a lot of problems with vehicle backing. When I was growing up, fender benders were $200, you're good to go. Well, nowadays, with all the sensors from the airbag and the sensors from the shoulder harness and all the component modular parts they put on these vehicles, you have a fender bender, and we're putting out $2,500 to fix your car and get it back on the road. And then when you back into each other, we're putting out $5,000 to fix your vehicles. I went into a Portland metropolitan area police chief's office last year. I was there because in the last 6 months, his department alone had totaled 22 accidents with a total cost of over $48,000. Now I have another safe driving class just geared for law enforcement only. It's a little bit different than this one. And I was there to try to convince him to send his officers to my class. Well, he stood up, puffed out his chest, huffed and puffed a few times, and pretty much told me, I don't need your stinking driving class. My officers are EVOC trained. They're 24/7. We're in a metro area. We're in high-speed pursuits. We're bound to have some accidents. Until I pointed out that 19 of the 22 accidents happened in his own parking lot. Then he understood what I was saying. But it led to a policy change, which was good. As the officers were coming into the station, they were pulling straight in. While they're in the station, over the radio, bank robbery in progress, shots fired, officer down, officer needs assistance. Well, with their adrenaline pumping, they're all running out of the station. They're all getting in their vehicles at the same time, and they're all backing out at the same time. Crunch, crunch, crunch. So the chief made a policy change that from now on, when you pull your rigs into the station, you back them in. So now when those calls come in, and they're all running out to their cars, they're all pulling out forward, looking at each other. And to this date, they've had 0 accidents in their parking lot. So it might be beneficial for you to go back to your workplaces and take a look at a lot of your parking schematics, your blind corners, how you do things. Do a little risk management, a little prevention before the accidents happen. If you do have to drive your rigs, your big rigs, or your trailers into large parking lots, park on the perimeter area so when you do leave, you can pull out forward, straight. If you have a co-worker with you, use them as a spotter. Make sure you two get your hand signals together before he gets out, and the spotter's responsibility is to always stay in the side view mirror of the driver. If you're in a parking lot by yourself in a sedan, you should always back out this way. That's the least amount of blind spots you have. If you go this way, you have more blind spot. Learn to use your side and rear view mirrors. Learn to look constantly. Back out slow. And what's the one universal sign in a parking lot that someone else is also backing up? Lights. Backup lights. And what color are they? White. So you see the white lights coming on your rear view mirror. Don't play backup chicken with them. Just pull back in, put it in park, wait for them to clear, and then go on your way. The faster you go, the more distance needs to be created between the vehicle in front of you and yourself. And the faster you go, it increases exponentially the impacts and effects of a crash. Probably going to get a ticket. I love how they even have the scratch marks from the claws right in the leather seats. So here's a vehicle at 25 miles per hour in a residential area. It hits a telephone pole. You can see front fender, radiator, hood damage. Now you would think at 25 miles per hour of that damage, if we go 50 miles per hour, we'd have twice as much damage. Well, I'm going to show you what happens to a Ford Taurus at 50 miles per hour that hits a street light pole. And that's all that's left of it. The faster you go, the impacts and damage to the vehicle exponentially increases. It doesn't just double or triple. Here's a vehicle that lost control at 110 miles per hour right outside of Dayton, Oregon, just outside of McMinnville. 5 adults in the vehicle. 5 adults killed. 4 of the adults were not wearing a safety belt. Sheriff's deputy said they pronounced all 5 adults dead on the scene. When I read about tragedies like this, I try to see, is there some silver lining here? I found one. Here's the write-up in the paper. 5 people killed in Yamhill County. Toyota Camry, going over 100 miles per hour. 20-year-old driver and 4 others killed. The silver lining I found was in the back seat, 2-year-old Sabian. He was properly strapped, belted, in a child safety car seat. Now you saw the condition of that vehicle. 5 adults dead. The little Sabian, strapped properly in a child car seat in the back seat, survived. And the silver lining is 5 weeks after the crash, this is Sabian. A little mark on his cheek, but he gets a chance at life now. Those 5 adults apparently didn't give a damn about their own life. 4 of them not even wearing safety belts, traveling at that speed. But somebody had enough sense to know a 2-year-old can't make his own mind up. These safety child seats work, same as the lap belt and the shoulder harness and the airbag. They work, but you have to use them. And when you use them properly, they do save lives. Another impact at 40 miles per hour, again, to show you how devastating things are. And we've all grown up on the 3-second rule, but this is a general rule. Don't go out of here and say, well, John said if I have 3 seconds between the car in front of me and myself, I'm good. That's not true. This is where the bumper, the rear bumper of a car in front of you passes a tree, and you go 1001, 1002, 1003. Your front bumper should not pass that tree in that amount of time. But that's a general rule. You've got age. As we all age, our reflexes are slower. Our eyesight's not as good. Our hearing's not as good. Some of us don't have coordination. Others do. We might have good tires, bald tires. We may have mushy brakes, good brakes. We may be on gravel, dirt, asphalt. It might be raining. It might be snowing. There's a whole lot of things you got to put in the mixing bowl, stir it up, before you determine is 3 seconds enough. In some cases, you might need 4 or 5 seconds. But I can't make that decision. You've got to make it. based on the conditions you're facing. And it's got to be a quick analysis done. Stopping distance at 60 miles per hour with perception, reaction, and braking. It's about a football field length on dry pavement. As you can see, you hit black ice, you're going for a sleigh ride. Might as well just hold on for the best. It's not difficult for speed calculations. Take 5,280 feet in a mile divided by 3,600 seconds in an hour. Averages to 1.47, but we can round it to 1.5. So at 65 miles per hour, you've gone 97.5 feet. Now here's that window of opportunity I was talking about in the first hour, where 80% of those people that were being video cammed over 2 million miles of driving, and 80% of them were distracted within 3 seconds of impact. What we've forgotten over time is this thing called perception reaction. That has a time factor. Perception and reaction for a teen, a 20, 30, early 40-year-old, it might be a second and a half. All things equal, you're wide awake, you're alert, you're generally coordinated, you're on top of your game. It might take 1.5 seconds for those people, which cuts in half the 3-second window you started with when you're distracted. And so now you're being asked at 65 miles per hour to stop your car in 1.5 seconds to avoid an impact, and you can't do it. There are so many of us, me included, I'm sure, that the second and a half is not enough time. For me to perceive something and then react to something, I might need 2 seconds. Or on a bad day, I might need 2.5 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1000. That's 2.5 seconds to perceive and react to something. That leaves little to no time to stop your vehicle. So when you are distracted at the time something occurs in front of you or to the side of you, you don't have any time whatsoever to take evasive action or stop your vehicle. Now 5 seconds is not a lot of time either. Changing out a CD, looking at your GPS, staring at the snow-capped mountains on the side, talking to your passenger, daydreaming. You can burn up 5 seconds in no time at all, and look what you've done. You've traveled 487.5 feet plus 146 feet reaction time. You've just gone 2 football field lengths without a foggiest idea of anything going on around you, in front of you, beside you, or behind you. That's like going out here on this highway, putting on a blindfold at 65 miles per hour and agreeing to drive 2 football field lengths. Anyone want to volunteer to do that? I sure don't. But that's what's happening when you're in your vehicle and you're distracted for just a mere 5 seconds. And again, that's not a lot of time if you think about it. The reason distractions are so severe and hazardous is because nobody is able to predict the future. I can't tell you what's going to happen 10 seconds from now until 10 seconds have lapsed. We can't do it. So if you're not engaged in driving safely, if your eyes are not on the road, you're distracted. And if you're distracted and you don't see these things happening and you can't predict that they will happen, you're in trouble, big trouble. As I said in the video, you may be lucky 40 times, but that's just it, you're lucky. And once that 41st time happens and you're unlucky, you're going to have to ride that path all the way to the end, and sometimes that might be a fatality. Watch hydroplaning on heavy rains on the highway at 60 miles per hour. All 4 of your tires aren't even touching pavement. Get off of cruise control in inclement weather. You've got to be in total, complete control of your vehicle. And I finally found a photo to explain ABS brakes. Could never explain them before, but here we've got 2 corgis being drugged down by the water. As you can see, one on the left with the ABS on, it's plop, 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 all 4 paws independently, braking and letting off the brake and so forth. But when the ABS is off and you hit your brakes, it's a dead skid, all 4 tires, straight down. So now you can explain it to anyone who asks. Now this is called Justice Served. This was filmed by a helicopter, high-speed pursuit by police. The driver in this vehicle here had just killed a 23-year-old bank teller, mother of 2. I'm showing you this video, and it happens very quickly, so you need to look at it, to show you at a high rate of speed on the highway when you just sideswipe a vehicle, how it can throw you totally, completely out of control. Doesn't take much. This guy does get ejected, and you'll see the rest of that, but I'm not showing you this video for that. Concentrate on that high speed, that side swipe, and what happens to the vehicle after that. See how quickly it got out of control, went sideways, driver ejected. That's why it's called justice served. Just saved taxpayers $50,000 in trial fees. So that's what happens when it's just, it wasn't much of a side swipe at all. It was just barely, but it's enough to get you that much out of control. Skid avoidance, we have a lot of soft shoulders in Oregon on the highways, particularly from the valley to the coast. And a lot of them slant, and sometimes we have no shoulders at all. But if you find yourself getting off in the shoulder, don't overcorrect. But the simplest way to get out of a skid is turn the steering wheel in the direction you want the front of your car to go. It's not any more complicated than that. If you're skidding out this way, you turn the wheel this way to bring the front over. If you're skidding out this way, you bring the wheel over this way. But don't overcorrect, because wheels are meant to go down the highway this way. When you overcorrect and your vehicle gets sideways, that's when you flip your car. 17-year-old Bend High School senior didn't get to graduation, head-on collision east of Madras on Highway 26. She swerved off the road, overcorrected, crossed the mid-center lane, and head-on collision. Now here we have middle of the afternoon. It's up on Highway 58 between Eugene and Oak Ridge. Heavy snow conditions, head-on collision with a semi, driver charged with manslaughter and DUI. The guy's drunk in the middle of the afternoon in these types of conditions. He's drunk. And he gets in a head-on collision and kills his passenger, who happens to be the daughter of his fiancée. So right away, we've got 3 lives ruined, all because of a bad judgment, going over the highway in these types of conditions. Did you all get a lot of snow this past winter down here? Have you had a lot of snow in past winters? Yeah. I drive all over the state all year round, and it cracks me up in the wintertime when I'm over the passes, and I'm up in the morning going to my member cities. And cars coming down the road, there's this little peephole of snow cleaned out, and that's it. The rest of the windows are all snow packed. I think, how do they drive? Well, I finally found a video. This is the proper way to prepare your vehicle before you get in it and take off. Well, somebody's going to be happy, just not him. Anyway, this is Highway 97, south of Bend, during snowy conditions. As you can see, a lot of slush in the road. You're going to see this vehicle right here move into this lane here and actually push the vehicle in front of him. It was going to speed up and pull in front of the panel truck right up in front. Now this driver here, they were able to recover his cell phone after the accident, so they know he was texting at the time. This is being filmed by a state trooper with the dash cam turned forward. This vehicle here is an SUV, and I'll let you see and follow what happens. As you can see, that SUV just literally imploded upon impact. Another example of don't text when you're driving. It didn't take a whole lot to get a little bit out of control, overcorrect, slam across the road after hitting the panel truck. I'll show it to you one more time. And by the way, the semi-truck driver, the report was he did spend about a year in counseling because of the impact it had on him imploding this vehicle. When he got to that point, there was no braking, there was no steering. In those conditions, the road conditions, with all that snow and slush and ice, nothing you can do. He was on a death run right after he sideswiped that panel truck. He didn't even know it. We got to be aware of drowsiness. You know, we all know when it comes on, we're yawning, our eyes are watering. We can't remember the last several miles of driving. We just passed our exit 5 miles back. When these symptoms come on, we've got to recognize them and pull off and take what I call a power nap. Just pull off in a rest stop or a safe place off the road. Put your seat back. Close your eyes. We all have smartphones, cell phones. Set an alarm. 20 minutes is all you need. Don't go any more than that, because if you sleep any longer than that, you'll wake up drowsy or more groggy. So power nap, 20 minutes will do you good. About 15, 16 years ago, we had an employee from Malheur County. That's over by Vail, almost by the Idaho border. He came over, drove over to Salem on a Wednesday to attend an all-day seminar on Thursday. Seminar ended at 5 o'clock on Thursday, and he thought, you know, if I can make it back tonight, I'm able to work tomorrow morning, Friday morning, take the afternoon off, and go on a fishing trip with my buddies. So he leaves the seminar, goes and gets something to eat, and about 7 o'clock he takes off cross-country. Goes straight across. About 11 o'clock at night, single car accident. He fell asleep at the wheel. After that accident, he spent 1 year in the hospital and a full year in therapy and rehab. It was over 2 years before he was able to return back to work. We spent over $485,000 on that one claim. Back then, they didn't have policies. When you're that far out and away, we put you up overnight in a hotel, we feed you, and bring you back the next day after a good night's sleep. And hopefully you all have those policies now, because that's what happened. Same thing here. I'm not driving back home tonight. When you're this far away from home, the company should put you up for one other additional night's lodging and feed you, bring you home safe and sound. Here's a 22-year-old student in Washington. He borrowed his mom and dad's Suburban, go back to college and haul some of his stuff. Fell asleep at the wheel early in the morning, but not before he ran 120 lineal feet of guardrail through his Suburban. Went through the passenger side engine compartment. That's him standing there. He's okay. That's the full amount of guardrail. But the investigation proved out that Washington State Department of Transportation, or whoever they contracted with, installed the guardrails wrong. You're supposed to overlap them in the direction of travel. These were reversed. And so this guy absolutely hit that seam dead on. And that's why he peeled all of that guardrail off. Cognitive inattention, look but didn't see. This all happens to us. I'm looking for my work boots, and I'm looking all over, and I ask my wife, where's my work boots? They're in the front closet. No, they're not. I just looked there. Yes, they are. I put them there yesterday. Go back and look. Sure enough, they're there. We get so tired, we get so focused on things, mentally and otherwise, we don't see things. Our eyes are not picking them up. And that's called cognitive inattention. And as we learned in the video, neurologists and medical doctors and research have proven that the human brain can only handle one thing at a time. Now granted, I'll give women the edge on this. They're better multitaskers than men. But it doesn't mean they're doing 5 things at the same time. They're doing 5 things consecutively, one after another. And if they don't devote enough time for each task, they don't get done very well. That's what we've also learned. What I would like you to do, I'd almost challenge you, think of a scanner. All those lights going back and forth represent some sort of distraction. I think what we've done over the years is taken safe driving and put it clear on another channel. And my challenge to you is to bring it back and put it on that channel with all those distractions. At least then, every second or so or less, you're thinking about driving safely along with all those distractions that are occurring. Give you an idea of this cognitive inattention. You're going to look at a little video. You have to concentrate. I'm going to give you the directions ahead of time. You're going to get them on the video too. The basketball team in white, you have to count how many times they pass the basketball. So you're getting this ahead of time, so concentrate. Let's see how many people can actually get this.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
So, how many honestly did not see the gorilla? First time I saw it, I didn't. It just completely floored me. But that's what happens when we're out there driving and we're thinking about too many things or we're getting tired. Our eyes, you may think, are focusing and seeing things, but they're really not. And the brain is not connecting whatsoever. So kind of keep that in mind. Over the years, I've developed the what-if technique. What if that car in front of me slams on the brakes? What if the car beside me drifts over? What if the idiot behind me who's texting, because I can see his head going up and down like this, I'm looking for another lane to get in, but I constantly play the what-if game. It works for me because it keeps me concentrated on driving safely. And knock on wood, I'm 59 years old, I've never had an accident in my life. Not even a fender bender, not even someone else's fault. Now, I wasn't always a good driver. I was really crazy when I was a teenager and a young adult, but then things changed in my mind. Things became more important, marriage, kids, and things like that. But the what if has always worked for me. You might try it, might work for you. What if this load falls off this truck? You can see there's sloped shoulders. I don't know if there's oncoming traffic this way, so my solution here is to slow down and back off, allow me more space in which to stop if that load falls off. This is ice, snow-covered road. What if a car comes around the corner out of control? This looks like a driveway. What if a car backs out or some bikes come across? Or maybe a deer jumps across the road down there? Constantly play these games. It keeps your mind on driving and driving safely. This is at Donner Pass in California. Semi-truck driver turned his video cam around. Right at the end of this long stretch, there's even signs blinking in red warning drivers to slow down. Now you're going to see a semi-truck driver come cruising down in this in lane and come around. How many of you have driven I-5, say, from Eugene down to Ashland? Yeah. All the turns and up and down passes and everything. And it amazes me as many times as I drive on that, and even in the rain, the number of times I see cars paralleling semis all around the turns. They don't even have an idea that those semis, they can drift into other lanes. Their load can shift, and they can get out of control. You could be in a blind spot, they don't even see you, and they move over. So the idea is to stay away from these semis, in the turns especially. Pass them in the straightaways, or slow down in the straightaways and stay behind them. Keep an eye on them in the turns. If they start coming up on you, you might have to speed up a little to get away from them, but don't parallel them. I want you to imagine as this semi is going around this turn, and you're right next to them in this inside lane. Tell me what you would do. Now this semi-driver does pull off the side and stop. He's just clearing the debris field right now. A lot of people wondered if he did. Yeah, he pulls down here and pulls it to stop. Now if you notice those trees on the right, they're actually only about 2 deep. And on the other side of the second tree level of row of trees, it's about a 1,000-foot canyon. And it took California Department of Transportation and Highway Patrol almost a week to pull that rig back up and also retrieve the 2 bodies, the driver and the passenger. Now, can you imagine if you were next to that semi at that time that happened? Nothing you can do. Nothing. And so that's why I really caution you. If you learn anything today, learn that and stay away from the semis on these highways. So in recapping, we've learned what we've forgotten over the years is perception and reaction and braking all have a time factor. I think we've forgotten about the first 2. And if you use the 3-second rule at 30 miles per hour, your vehicle 77 feet of perception, reaction 33, braking 43. You're about 18 feet too close, maybe a vehicle length too close at 3 seconds. Now granted, it might just be a tap, but it'll be a contact. Now ratchet it up to 70 miles per hour at 3 seconds, 180 feet perception, 77 reaction, 233 braking. You're 175 feet too close, and you're going to have a violent rear-end collision. So again, 3 seconds is a general rule. Go into the mixing bowl according to your conditions, figure it out. So these are all in a workbook that you can print off from our webpage. I'm not going to bore you. These are things that I've learned over the years and whatever. Got to get you to the quiz, though, but relax. It's open class, open book. Multitasking while driving takes 3 years of practice, should only be attempted by experienced drivers. Yeah, it never truly is safe while you're driving. Distractions are good things that divert your attention to keep you from driving dangerously. Better say false. Glancing at your side view, rear view mirrors every few seconds is considered normal and acceptable. True. I never really talked about it, but you need to be aware of what's on your sides and behind you, but only glancing. Most of your time is spent in front of you, but don't forget your sides and rear view occasionally. Once you become an experienced driver, handling many other tasks becomes less of a risk. False. It never decreases at all. Vehicle traveling 60 miles per hour covers 88 feet per second. That was in the video. I wanted to see if you were paying attention. I use 65 miles per hour, which is 97.5 feet per second. Allowing yourself to be distracted is much like gambling. The odds are not in your favor, and your good luck will run out. Absolutely. Talking on a cell phone, you're the only one at risk of having an accident. No, everyone else around you is at risk as well. Using the cell phone is acceptable because it cannot be controlled and everyone else is using one. Bad idea, absolutely. If you have over 15 years experience without an accident, it's okay to read a newspaper, text message, and talk on a cell phone. Yeah, better say false. And some of the things that we talked about, these are not all inclusive. There are many, many others, but just to give you a gist, there are a lot of distractions out there. Be aware of them. Be aware of how they impact and affect your driving. And maybe give some thought to what things that you might want to stop doing that you recognize as being a distraction. So we covered a lot of material in a short period of time. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, well, we do this every 2-3 years. The next time I'm back, I'll have different videos and different slides for sure. So my goal is to at least see all of your smiling faces back here, which tells me you're driving safely. Okay, go forth and be safe.